Well, good afternoon again. This is Micah Young with Micah Young Podcast, and I want to thank you for listening or watching. We really appreciate any time you participate in what we're doing. And if you like what you see, if you'll click like and if you'll subscribe, then anytime there's a new one that comes out, it will give you a notification that it's here. But I just want to let you know how much we appreciate you participating. And we get responses. And so if you want to send a response or make a note or a comment, feel free to do that. If it requires a response, we'll be glad to respond to you. So just want to thank you for that. It's a real honor and privilege today. I've got a very special friend with me. This is Tom. And Tom and I have known each other since about 1991. And they say that a good friend will bail you out of jail, but a really good friend will be sitting in the cell with you going, damn, that was fun. Tom's one of those friends. He would be there. We've been through a lot together. We've raised kids together, went through some tough times together. And so he was certainly one that I wanted to include in one of our podcasts. So Tom, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
One of the things that we want to make sure that we communicate is that these things that we've been sharing about relationship with the Lord and the freedom that comes in that and the freedom from the religious influences that Christ wants to set us free from, we want to make sure that we communicate that that's real life stuff. It's not just theology or doctrine. It's not just something that you believe in as a formula, but it's something that's lived out. And so we want to make sure that that comes across. And Tom, in his walk with the Lord, has been an expression of that. And so I just wanted to include him and maybe ask him some questions or let him ask some questions. But first, Tom, I'd like for you to just share a little bit about your story and how this whole reality came about in your life.
All right. When you get asked to share your story, you always, try to figure out where to start your story at, where that started. And for me, I would say the beginning of where I started and where I came to was early in my childhood. I'd been in church all my life. I had, since a very young age, had been taken to church. I listened to preaching, revivals all my life. And there were parts of my life that told a story that didn't add up to what I now know. The experiences in my life, the things that were said about me, the lies that I said about myself and who I was, and the lies that I believed about God spoke louder than the reality that I now know is in God. And, I had this view of there was a God that if I stepped out of line, he was going to swat me.
Wow.
I was going to be severely punished. I was going to be disciplined in a way that did not speak of love and acceptance and come to me. It spoke of, I need to hide from you. Okay. I need to be in a hiding place, that I just couldn't come to him with the terrible, the bad, whatever was wrong with me. I believed God was who he said he was, but the experience spoke louder than that belief to me at the time. So, kind of fast forward through all of my life until a time where my wife and I, we tend to phrase it as the great sadness came. And I had, through many experiences in my life, gotten addicted to pornography. This is the first time that I've ever publicly spoken of this. But I feel like it's important because what God has done in that, with me, has brought me to a place of understanding of who God is who he says he is and who he says I am and how much he loves me. And so I'll just say that, I was addicted to pornography for years. I had confessed it at one time to you and, the home group that we were in, and, thought that all was good, gone through a little counseling, and, it just came back because I was treating the symptoms and not the real problem. And the real problem was who God said I was, not who everybody else said I was, not who I said I was, but who God said he was for me and who I was to him. So I got discovered by my bride that I was doing pornography, and she left the house, and at that time she went to you. I didn't know that, but she had come to you, and I just knew that my life was over with. I knew that I was going to lose everything that I had, that I'd ever felt like was, me. It was all going to be just tore down and destroyed, and that was the end. I couldn't see anywhere else to go or whatever else that would look like.
Well, let me ask you on that point then. So was it that fear that kept you from ever just really being honest about the root of all of that? You just
Absolutely.
were afraid your life was going to be done.
Absolutely. The enemy told me, and I told myself, you can never be real and say, I have a problem with pornography. I have an addiction. I have this secret in my life that the only person that needs to know about that secret is me. Even though the scriptures speak of the forgiveness of the Father when we come to him, I didn't see that as an option for me.
Okay.
So,
so you in that process, you found out, if I understand what you're saying, that pornography really wasn't the issue, that there was a whole world behind that just resulted in that. Would that be accurate?
That's very accurate. It was a place of, I guess in a way it was just a sin that had started early in my life, and I continued to let it go, but it was a place of refuge. It was a place, it was a self-medication. Much like alcoholism, much like drug addiction, there's underlying issues in our lives that we can't cope with, and we use other mechanisms to cope with those other than going to the Father.
Okay.
Sitting and listening to him speak to us and tell us how much he loves us, and here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to hear. Here's how you combat that. And so, when that happened, I became discovered. I'll just say it that way. Leslie, unbeknownst to me, when she left the house, she came straight to you. And she talked to you, and I think, you asked her a question, well, what do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
Because this wasn't the first time. This was actually the second time that this had come up. And so I remember her response to you as it was relayed to me by you and her both was, I just want to see him whole.
Yeah.
I just want to see him set free. And that's an integral part of what happened to me, and I don't want to skip past that. But so I called you after she had done that, right. And I said, I've messed up. I need to come to you. Can I come talk to you? Well, little did I know, you'd already known everything, and I showed up, and so we talked. And that started me on a process of exposing the depth of depravity of my own life and what I believed about myself and the lies, and discovering who the Father was and who he says I was. that I was loved by him, that I was accepted by him. And so in that process, it was several weeks after we had begun to start doing some counseling, talking with one another, when I began to share with my wife the depth of everything that happened. One Sunday morning at church, Joni, your wife, stood up and said, "The Father is here today, and it's time. He wants to meet you where you are, and he wants to tell you how much he loves you." In that effect, it's time to do business with the Father. So I'm sitting there, and there's this huge weight that's resting on my shoulders. And I wouldn't say it was a great, terrible burden. It was just a weight of, it's now.
Okay.
It's time. And so I came forward and I said, I need help. And I would like to tell all of you guys that are sitting out there that are in the same situation, even ladies, anybody that listens to this broadcast, and you find yourself in a situation where I was, it starts with, I need help. It starts with a confession of where I am, and then, working the work towards getting that problem healed, taken care of, whatever is the root of the outlying symptom, if you will.
Okay. Well, let me ask.
Yeah, frame it.
From not your perspective, but the outside perspective, ask you a question about that.
Okay.
Was it important to you to have a safe place to do that?
Absolutely.
And that, I mean, not a geographical place, but safe people that you would be able to do that with.
Absolutely. In our relationship, the long relationship we had, one of the things that really allowed me to be totally free and honest with you after all this of hiding all of this was your posture towards me in the entirety that I've known you. And it was a posture of, man, I love you. I care about you. I'm here for you. And I knew you were a safe place. I knew that, I guess I tested that at times over the years.
Did we both?
With some different issues and stuff. And, we've had some discussions before, but, the life that you walked in front of me, to me, spoke volumes to me when it was time for me to just come clean. And so, it was very important for me to be in a place where I felt safe. People were honest. And I could be honest.
Yeah.
And I knew that their love for me was greater than the sin.
Sounds like grace.
Grace.
Sounds like grace, doesn't it?
Sounds a lot like
What
grace.
Paul said.
That's exactly what it is, grace. So, very much important. And what my wife had said to me about, I just want to see him whole, was an expression of grace.
Right.
I knew then she didn't care about the sin more than she cared about me being whole and right with God and understanding who he was.
Well, I think that's so important because from like, say, the outside perspective, we have a tendency to judge people and to criticize people. And there are people out there that are in bondage over things, not just pornography, but a lot of different things, that would love to have a safe place to be able to come clean.
Yeah.
But typically, in a lot of cases, the religious system has been critical or judgmental, and they feel like, well, if I go there, I'm going to get judged and I'm going to get condemned and I'm going to get hammered. And they do. And they get judged and condemned and hammered even before they come clean. And that causes them to say, well, I'm just going to close down further and close off more. So I think that's a wonderful point to know that we need to be a safe place for people who want to be honest about their life and deal with their life.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, how can you come clean with the dirty, the ugly, the sin in your life, the failings, the emptiness, the hurt, the wounds, unless you know that you're not going to be judged by those. You're going to be loved to heal, to wholeness.
Yeah.
You're going to be supported in whatever you need to go through in order to get set free.
Yeah, and the distorted view that you had of the Father, I guess, would keep you from that. And the believer's responsibility is to be an expression of the legitimate Father.
Right.
That he is open, that he is accepting, and to dispel those thoughts of, well, he's going to whack me, or he's going to, I can't be honest about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The book that I'd heard, it wasn't a book, it's a sermon by Jonathan Edwards, preached in 1745 or something of that nature, a long time ago. The title of his sermon was Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. It wasn't just that I'd heard that, but it was some of the teaching, some of the attitudes from pastors talking about Christ and our need for him was more on, you're a filthy, rotten sinner, and God's going to spew you out of your mouth, and all of these things. Now I'm paraphrasing a lot of it, but that's the impression that came from that. That's what the enemy tells you, that lines up, that tells you, well, I don't want to go to that.
Yeah.
I've already experienced that a lot in my life. And so, yeah, absolutely. Just that.
And so it really, the bottom line to the perspective of this is, it really is not the focus on what you heard. It's the focus on how you perceived what you heard.
Absolutely.
That's the conclusion that you drew from that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the lies that you tell yourself, the enemy tells you that you believe more than the truth of what God says he is. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. That's good. Well, we're going to make this part one, and we're going to take up with the rest of Tom's story. We try to keep them around 15 minutes. And so we want to invite you to check out number 2. And thank you for listening, and hope that you're blessed by what you hear. So Lord bless you.
Yeah.